Cold and wet, veiled by swirling mist, the image of a moorland bog hides much of its true nature. Surrounded by folklore and legend, treacherous underfoot, lonely and desolate in winter, it has a sinister reputation that in summer belies its wild beauty. High above Devon's rolling landscape lies the granite core of a once great mountain chain. Dartmoor is England's largest wilderness. A remote plateau rises to the north of the moor, covered by a vast blanket bog created over thousands of years. Rotting granite beneath a layer of peat acts as a giant sponge absorbing the high rainfall. The origin of 5 major rivers and hundreds of smaller streams, the source that feeds the water supplies of the southwest's growing population. To the south lies another large wetland and the fabled haunt of the Hound of the Baskervilles. Tor Mire is one of Dartmoor's most dangerous bogs, deep and treacherous. There are surprisingly few really dangerous mires, but for the unwary, there is no escape. In the wild, one creature is always willing to take advantage of another's misfortune. The acid conditions of moorland bogs prevent much bacterial decay, and so carcasses are left to scavengers like the fox. Down in a valley, it pays to tread carefully when crossing a mire. The ground beneath my feet sways and trembles, a quaking bog, created when a layer of matted vegetation is undercut by a stream. And this is all that lies between me and clear, cold water, a raft of moss. But this is no ordinary moss. It's called sphagnum and can hold a tremendous amount of water. On high, poorly drained ground with heavy rain, it forms a carpet that quickly covers other plants, a bog. The northern plateau today shows little sign of active moss growth, except for the occasional bright green hollow. But several thousand years ago, a change from Arctic tundra to warm, wet conditions was just right to create a blanket bog. Layer upon layer of moss and a few other plants, gradually compacted under the weight of a living green blanket to form peat. These old cuttings near Cranmere Pool give a clue to its importance in former times. Only 50 years ago, it was still the cheapest fuel to burn. Today, a few freshly cut turfs can still be found, the legacy of a climatic change at the end of the last ice age. Midwinter, and the skies clear after an overnight blizzard, bringing in the promise of ice on snow. A solitary raven is the only sign of life. It's almost subarctic on the high moor. Even in a sheltered valley, a pool can remain frozen for days. But on a south-facing slope, a stream warms to a winter sun at the end of January. Even before the last snow has gone, I'm looking for a sign that spring is not too far away. And where better to start than beneath a piece of old corrugated iron? Waiting for a break in the weather, frogs return each year to spawn. This annual migration is triggered by a slight rise in temperature and the onset of mild, damp weather. The males arrive first, setting up a chorus of croaks to attract others. Within 24 hours, hundreds have converged on this shallow pool. As each female arrives, the male, attracted by her swollen, egg-laden body, grasps her in a cold embrace. Horny pads on his thumb help him to keep a firm hold until spawn is produced. Up to 3,000 gelatinous-covered eggs are laid by each female, and the pool soon fills with spawn. It's a race against time before the weather turns cold or a predator finds some easy pickings. The morning after a hectic night before is strangely quiet. Gone is the croaking chorus, for most have scattered back into the surrounding bog, a cycle that has remained unchanged for thousands of years. A solitary adult remains with the now developing young. Some, exposed to chill winds and a night frost, don't stand a chance. The days are now beginning to warm, and the first flowers appear. Water crowfoot, and the tiny bog violet. Within a few weeks, tadpoles swim free into a world where they must fend for themselves. In contrast to the frog's frenzy, the palmate newt has a more subtle approach. The male shows off his fine colours to a female, and then courts her by wafting a stream of water, perhaps carrying his scent. The last week of March, and the pools come alive with insects. Whirligig beetles live up to their name. A predatory pond skater waits for its prey, while below lurks a voracious hunter. The nymph of the greater diving beetle drains the life from its hapless victim. But it's not the only predatory insect to hunt these bog pools. This is the aquatic larva of a dragonfly. But thousands of tadpoles do survive in the shallows, growing fat on the surrounding algae. It's April, and while the days are still cool, the morning sun soon warms not only the ground, but also an adder. Basking on a dry patch in the middle of a mire, this adder is unlikely to be disturbed. Drawn by the sheer number of amphibian prey, Britain's only venomous snake is attracted to moorland bogs early in the year, before returning to the drier moor for the summer. A hunter by night, it basks during the day, flattening its patterned body against warm moss to catch the sun's rays. But even a hunter can quickly become the hunted, though this kestrel is unlikely to tackle such a large snake. But in the wild, it pays to be cautious. In the first week of May above Tor Mire, a strange sound echoes across the moor. Hidden deep in the bog, a secretive bird has already laid her eggs, the snipe. Nearby, the male's drumming is produced not by its call, but by tail feathers vibrating as it dives through the air. A strange-shaped bird, the snipe's long probing bill with a sensitive tip, makes up a quarter of its total body length. The nest is a simple platform, only just above water level. Safe from marauding predators it may be, but each year many nests are washed out by heavy falls of rain. Being most active at dawn and dusk, the snipe has a secretive nature, often heard but seldom seen, unless perhaps flushed from beneath your feet, when with a loud call it takes to the wing in a zigzag flight. The snipe is not the only bird to nest over wet ground. Strangely named, the reed bunting seldom nests amongst reeds, more often in a tussock of grass or sedge. Recent years have seen an increase in the number of these birds, and they're now a common sight on the moor. In contrast to the brown-patterned female, the male is strikingly marked. This nest may not necessarily contain his own family. Sometimes he'll run several, each with its own female and brood. The young, now almost fully fledged, stay in the nest until ready to fly. Lapwing chicks, like the snipe, will leave the nest as soon as the last egg has hatched. Its distinctive call gives rise to its other, more popular name, the peewit. The lapwing nests on a dry patch near the edge of the bog. The young soon spread out to feed on a rich supply of insects. But at this age, they're vulnerable to most predators, and the buzzard is no exception. At the first sign of danger, a parent's call freezes the chick. Cryptic coloration blends it into its surroundings, but to work, it must stay quite still. A camouflage chick and distraction display by an adult is an evolved combination for survival. Butterflies are a rare sight on the moor. Sheltering from the wind, this one is even rarer. The marsh fritillary has disappeared from many of its former haunts in the south, but a few remain in the more remote lower valleys. Plants grow quickly in the warming days, and large green hummocks rise from the bog. Like a feather bed, they're soft to touch, but this one is treacherous to walk on. A miniature jungle where hair moss pushes up through sphagnum, and where a tiny wolf spider carries her eggs in a pearl-like sack. Cool, wet and windy, bogs attract few creatures. With little calcium available for snails to make shells, it's hardly surprising that slugs are so common. This is the great black slug, which may not appeal to us, but in hard times they're an important food source for foxes and other predators. But even a slug cannot be tempted to eat sphagnum. Hiding amongst bog pimpernel, the toad is a common visitor to the lower valleys. June, and warm weather brings colour to the mire, buttercups and water forget-me-nots. A marsh orchid raises its flowers above sodden ground, and the first damselflies appear. Unlike the larger dragonfly, damsels are weak flyers and differ from their relatives by being able to fold their wings. Strange primitive insects, and justly feared in times past. As midsummer approaches, this dragonfly nymph heads towards the surface. After 2 years underwater, it climbs into the air for the very first time. For the past few days, tissues within its hard outer skin have been changing to an adult form. The old skin splits behind the neck, and an adult dragonfly begins to emerge. A miracle of nature, little changed over millions of years, since before dinosaurs roamed the earth. White threads are the remains of its old breathing tubes. Hanging upside down, the dragonfly rests for up to an hour, regaining strength for its next move. Free for the first time of its old skin, blood is pumped through tiny veins to enlarge its wings. Soft and vulnerable at first, most dragonflies emerge in the early hours of morning. First light, and this golden-ringed dragonfly, just a few hours old, is nearly ready to fly. Several days will pass before full adult colouring and sexual maturity are reached. Ferocious they may appear, and to us they are indeed harmless, but to other insects these winged dragons are as dangerous as the beasts of legend. Of the many different types of dragonfly, only a few are found on the high moor. One of the most common is the keeled skimmer, Like most of its kind, it may have only a few days to mate and continue its line. After mating, it will be only minutes before this female begins to lay her eggs. Returning to a favoured rush, the brightly coloured male may live for a few weeks if the weather stays fine. Seeking out a boggy pool, with each dip she leaves an egg to drift down to the bottom, the beginning of a dragonfly's aquatic life. Summer comes late on the moor, bringing a welcome splash of colour. Once just a clump of moss, over the years this mound has become an island of flowers above the rest, a home for the cross-leaved heather and bog asphodel. Flowers are the real beauty of a moorland bog in summer, a place where the cotton grass grows. Basking in an August heatwave, Dartmoor ponies come down to drink and cool. After weeks of little rain, the mire is now the only source of water. In the heat of a summer sun, it provides not only water, but safety and shade for many creatures. Froglets, tails almost gone, emerge to feed on millions of tiny flies, a rich source of food not only for frogs, but also for newts. A haven for some, it can also be a hunting ground for others. Grass snakes are equally at home on land or water, watching for anything that moves. Not as common as the adder, they're confined to valley bogs. This young snake is only a few days old and unlikely to tackle a baby newt, let alone an adult. A tiny flower waits for an insect pollinator, while its leaves have a more fatal attraction for this fly. The butterwort is a curious plant. Growing in mineral-deficient acid soil, it must gain its food from another source. Trapped on a sticky leaf, this fly is its next meal. Over several hours, the leaf edges curl inward, releasing enzymes and consuming the hapless creature. But it's not the only insectivorous plant of moorland bogs. The sundew, with its glistening tiara, a deadly trap for the unwary. Caught by sticky tentacles, this ant will be lucky to escape with its life. Each tip produces a sticky secretion. When touched, they curve slowly in towards its victim and then exude a digesting enzyme. This fly was not so lucky as the ant and has come literally to a very sticky end. In this way, the plant gains all the nutrients it needs to flower in late summer. Like other bog plants, they're carried high to catch the wind for seeds to spread. An inconspicuous flower that belies the plant's lethal nature. As summer comes to an end, cotton grass seeds are born across the mire. Many weeks have passed since the last fall of rain, yet the bogs still run with water. But the surrounding moor is now tinder dry. A careless thought and a hot sun is a recipe for disaster. It takes only a few seconds for dry plants to scorch and burn. Remote and out of control, the fire spreads quickly, consuming all in its path as it's fanned by a breeze. If the underlying peat should ignite, it could burn for days. By morning, the fire has almost burnt itself out, dying at the edge of a mire. Many creatures fleeing before the flames sought safety in the bog. A retreat in a changing world, the haunt of serpents and dragons. A place where snipe drum and lapwing fly, the home of strange plants and colourful flowers. Moorland mires have a real value, evolved over thousands of years, not just as a source of water, but as a reservoir of life. And that, for me, is the beauty of a Dartmoor bog.